Good day. It's JJ MMA. In honor of the GOAT Bilal Muhammad's tragic loss, the tragedy that it was, we will be doing a tier list today in homage of Bilal Muhammad, ranking UFC fighters based on how boring they are. Yeah, I thought this would be a fun one to do today. Original one. And yeah, I mean, this is one of the first ideas that came to mind. I was actually thinking about this while going live, watching Bilal Muhammad, thinking about how he changed his style to try to be more entertaining, to try and entertain people when he didn't really need to. He should have just been pushing for the win. But we'll talk about him in a second. I'm going to tell you guys about the tiers. Would rather watch paint dry is the first tier. In the highest up tier, this is ranking fighters on most boring to least boring out of the boring ones. Guys that are considered boring will be on this list. So I'm not going to be putting super entertaining fight. Like, if I was going to put super entertaining fighters on this tier, I would put like a tier that's like, most entertaining. But I'm not doing that today. Out of fighters that are stereotypically considered boring by the average UFC fan base will be on this tier list. And would rather watch paint dry is the most boring, guys. Tier 2, very boring, is, guys that are pretty damn boring, but they're not the worst. They're not the worst of the boring. Tier 3 is medium boring, which means, they can have entertaining moments, but at the same time, they're generally known as boring, and they generally fight boring. And tier 4 is, guys that can be entertaining at times. Sometimes they're entertaining, and they're not that bad to watch. But, generally in my eyes, they are considered a pretty boring fighter still. And tier 5, I like watching this guy. In tier 5 are the guys that I like to watch. They're low-key fun to watch. And not because, they're going out there and getting all these crazy finishes, but just because, their fight style is, high volume, edge of your seat because it's so technical. These guys could still get a finish. But, that's kind of the description of the tiers. We're going to start off right away. The first guy that we're going to put on this tier list is the GOAT, the basis of this video himself, Bilal Muhammad. And I'm going to go ahead and put this guy in the medium boring tier. Now, a year ago, I'd say probably a year ago, like right before his loss to JDM, which he did have a good scrap with JDM. He actually did put some damage on the GOAT JDM's face a little bit. People forget, man. But, Canelo Hands over here, he's medium boring. He would have been probably in the very boring or would rather watch paint dry tier before. But people forget, man, Bilal actually does have finishes in the UFC. Regardless, he doesn't hurt anyone on the feet. When he's on the feet, he does have solid technical boxing, but he can't hurt anyone on the feet with his punches. He has zero steam in his punches, wings overhands that he only throws off his front foot, and he's balancing on one leg for everything. Super awkward striking, and he can't hurt anyone on the feet and has no, really grounded power with his boxing. And he couldn't hurt anyone on the feet in his whole career so far, besides somehow Sean Brady. You know what I'm saying? He put some damage on JDM's face. But the only guy who was really hurt and wobbled and made not defend himself and made into a punching bag on the feet was Sean Brady. And I mean, he's usually a smudge grappler too. He's usually taking you down and snuggling you on the ground, trying to throw in some ground and pound, just trying to make it uncomfortable for you, rubbing his sweat in your face. Until recently, he's tried. It's like this weird mental conflict inside his brain. You know what I'm saying? It's like something with Bilal that he tries to convince himself that he's not boring or something, or he's really trying to please the fans. Ever since he beat Leon Edwards, and thankfully he did, because I was happy to see Leon Mumblemouth Edwards get dunked on his head. But ever since then, ever since that performance, ever since everybody's calling him boring, Canelo Hands is a joke, he's really fallen into this gimmick of Canelo Hands, and he's tried to strike on the feet. He's tried to strike with JDM, even though he did shoot 9 takedowns. He's tried to strike with Ian Gary, but, as of recent, in the Bonfim fight that he just had, he literally tried to strike the whole fight and didn't shoot any takedowns until round 3. And after round 3, he just had weak takedown attempts, and then he didn't shoot at all after round 3. Rounds 4 and 5, Bilal Muhammad didn't shoot a single takedown on Gabriel Bonfim in a 5-rounder. So that was interesting to me. But I'm not going to diss on him too much because I do feel bad for him. He's an unk. He's 38 years old. I feel bad for him. The pictures of him getting beat up by Bonfim are kind of funny. Looking at the panic on his. Bilal's one of the funniest fighters to see panicked. It's there's something about Bilal's face when he's panicked. He goes bro, the Kareem Abdul-Lavash comparison of him is actually so accurate. He actually does look. He looks more like Kareem Abdul-Lavash than Klay Thompson does. But yeah, that's what I think about Bilal. He's medium boring. We move on to the next guy in this tier list, and it's Merab. And I'm going to put Merab in the very boring tier. I think Merab is very boring, regardless of, he's got a great personality. He's a funny dude, nice skits. He shoots 50 takedowns a fight. That's the main thing to note about this guy. He literally broke the takedown record of takedowns attempted. He shot 49 takedowns in the first fight against Petr Yan, and that's genuinely enrages me. It genuinely enrages me that this guy has the pace to shoot for 50 takedowns a fight. It's absolutely nuts to me. Something about these Caucasus guys with their cardio, and I think it's because at an elevation, their body does produce more natural EPO. That's just how it works, and that's why these guys are so good with their cardio, and that's why they're able to push such a crazy wrestling pace. That's why Umar is able to just like shoot 50 takedowns in a row and not get tired as well. So, oh, and speaking of Umar, we'll talk about him later in the video. Spoiler alert. But other than shooting 50 takedowns a fight, he just wings overhands at distance with Merab striking. Merab has got better with the striking, but he does just kind of boxing bounce at distance. Shrug his shoulders and just put his guard up and move his guard a lot. And he's just winging overhands at distance, and then he just shoots 50 takedowns a fight, and it's annoying. He's got great cardio. He's obviously a great fighter. But he's super annoying and super boring to watch. After he rocked Corey Sandhagen on the feet in their fight in round 2, he hurt Corey Sandhagen on the feet in their fight. So that was entertaining. I thought Merab was going to get a finish, and then you hear a DC eating and laughing on commentary, not taking the fight serious at all. Always ruins it for me. But like Belal, other than hurting Corey Sandhagen somehow and putting away Marlon Moraes, and Marlon Moraes is the chinny chin man. Marlon Moraes has probably one of the worst chins I've ever seen towards the back half of his career. I think he's on like a 7-fight getting KO'd streak. So that's interesting, and including outside the UFC, 4 inside the UFC, 3 outside. He does thinking about the other guy. Merab does no damage with the strikes. Merab does absolutely no damage with the strikes besides hurting Corey Sandhagen somehow, which I still don't understand how Corey Sandhagen fell to Merab. At least Belal tries to entertain. I feel like the only ways that Merab tries to entertain is, throw down Umar with a takedown in the last 13 seconds of a fight and then start emoting, jumping up and down, yeah, bro, yeah, and then he just goes like this, and then he's like, I have to shoot 50 takedowns a fight, and then he's, just shooting 50 takedowns a fight, and that's what he does. It's a boring style. I don't like it. He's annoying. And, he's actually kind of funny with his skits and stuff, but the only entertaining thing about him is his personality, to be honest. And, yeah, we move on to the next guy on this tier list. Kind of a niche fighter, just made his debut in the UFC not too long ago. I think on the Melky Costa versus Allen card. He made his debut against Artur Manev, and that's Tommy Gant. And I raged about him. I'm pretty sure I was on live for this one, right? Was I on live for Tommy Gant's debut? Yeah, I think I was. I was on live for this one, and I famously raged on live about how Tommy Gant was just laying on this guy, and it was super annoying. He's holding him up against the fence, knee in the thigh, this guy fought like a Dagestan. He fought like Miktabek Oralbai fought against Chris Curtis, for those who know. I famously raged about him on live stream, and I put a bounty on his head when I did so. That's the thing about him, and I know he's in one of the lower tiers, but I would like to go ahead and apologize because I watched back his fights, and why is this dude low-key a finisher? I think he has 12 fights, he's 12-0, and he's finished every single one of them except for one. And I forget who that one was against. I think it was against a regional guy. DC hypes this guy up a lot. He's a bantamweight, I think, and he's got super good smudge grappling. It's super annoying, but he took a short notice fight against this guy named Artur Manev, Ukrainian prospect. He was undefeated too, but he wasn't very good. He was fighting in a weak MMA promotion. I watched back his fights. He's a good finisher. Is Tommy Gant. The bounty's been revoked. I've revoked the bounty. I forget how much the bounty was. I think it was only $100 or something. So not too much. But take this with a grain of salt, Tommy Gant. It shall return if you lay and pray once more. Take this as your first and final warning. I will put that bounty back on your head, and I'm going to raise it 10 times. If you lay and pray again, I will raise that bounty to 10,000, not 10,000. I don't have that money. I have money for 1,000 though. I will, whoever slimes out Tommy Gant in the first round will get $1,000 if and only if you just lay and pray in your next performance. If you go to decision, or if you lay and pray until like the last final seconds and get an arm triangle like my boy Bryce did, but it's different with Bryce, you know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's where I put Tommy Gant on this tier list. We move on to the next guy that we're going to put on this tier list, Khamzat Chimaev. And I thought about this one, you know, I really don't like Khamzat Chimaev. But thinking about it, he can be entertaining, man. Khamzat Chimaev actually can be very entertaining. There are a few fights that hold him up on a pedestal and keep him away from the medium boring / very boring tiers. But Khamzat's fight with DDP was honestly the only real boring fight of his career. And he did try to be boring against Strickland. He tried to shoot his takedowns. He got all of them stuffed once the first round ended. The full first round was super boring, and I was getting ready to completely rage and say some things that might have got me banned off YouTube if Khamzat and Strickland went the distance and it was just another 50-44 for Khamzat. But regardless, you know, the fight with DDP was really the only boring fight of his career, but he still doesn't do enough damage when he's on the ground. Like, when he's on the ground, he's kind of just laying down and throwing these little tiny ground and pound milking the cow shots. That's why he had like 400 strikes landed against DDP, because he just put him in crucifix and was just like throwing these little tiny punches on his face, and they weren't doing anything. Like, DDP was barely damaged on the fight. It looked like he might have just got done playing with his dog or something, and his dog scratched him in the face. Like, there was a few scratches on his face from Khamzat, but zero damage was done. But, you know, the thing about Khamzat is what keeps him from the medium boring and very boring tiers is he has good scraps. You know, he can scrap on the feet. Khamzat's a very underrated striker. I talked about him a little bit in my recent strikers tier list, and I did actually rate him pretty highly. I do rate Khamzat pretty decently highly in the striking category. Regardless, you know, he don't strike enough, though. If you can strike with Strickland, and if you can outperform Adesanya in the striking, I think you're a pretty good striker, man. And don't get me wrong, Strickland did have one arm that fight. People forget, man. But, you know, the Burns fight really gets him away from the medium boring tier. You know, the fight with Burns, obviously an all-time legendary fight. Probably top 5, at least top 10 fights of all time was Khamzat versus Burns. Yeah, that puts him on a big pedestal. And the fight with Usman, also some really nice scrambles. You know, those who are hardcores like the scrambles with him and Usman. And yeah, you know, he's really a finisher other than the Khamzat and not the Khamzat, the DDP fight. And he did try to be boring against Strickland, so I don't like him for that. But Khamzat can be entertaining at times. We move on to the next guy that we're going to put on this tier list, and we're going to put Makhachev on this tier list, and we're going to put him a tier above Khamzat. We're going to put him in the medium boring tier. I mix him up. Islam is low-key underrated with his lay and pray. You know, people glaze Islam as like, oh my gosh, he's such a finisher. Oh my gosh, he's so dominant. But he does low-key just lay and pray. Like, when he's on the ground with somebody who has good jiu-jitsu defense, he does kind of just lay on them. He don't really try much ground and pound. He's always just like, he's trying to work for submission, but once somebody has really good jiu-jitsu defense or just like clings on to the wrist like Volk does, he kind of just stalls and stays there, zero ground and pound. And he doesn't get stood up for some reason. Like, Mark Goddard is quick to stand up Moreno, but for some reason, you know, once Islam's on the ground for JDM for the whole fight, you know, Mark Goddard don't even think about standing him up. Same thing with Herbie. I forget who's repping the JDM and Makhachev fight, but nobody thought about standing him up when Islam was literally just moving positions and throwing little tiny ground and pound shots on JDM once again. His performance against JDM was even worse than DDP versus Chimaev. It was not worse because it was still dominant, but it was even more boring than Chimaev's performance against DDP, and it enraged me more because JDM's one of my favorite fighters. So that just pisses me off, man. I love JDM, and to see him get laid and prayed and dominated like that, and his face looks soy going to the 5th round, like, bro, it made my blood boil to see Makhachev do that to my boy. But, you know, in the first Volk fight, when he was grappling with Volk, he didn't really, like, I know he backpacked Volk in the first round, but, you know, other than that, he did kind of just lay on him. You know, he didn't try much ground and pound, wasn't really dominant with his grappling. Like, once Volk got on top, stacked his guard in the 5th round, you know, then he started raining down his ground and pound. And I know it's a different, you know, higher urgency situation that Volk was in, but regardless, when Volk is on top, you know, he ground and pounds. He works for the finish. But, you know, Makhachev doesn't. Like, when Makhachev's in dominant positions all the time, and when he's in dominant positions, you know, he he don't really want to finish unless the Darce is right in front of him. Like when he had Poirier in the front headlock position and was looking for a Darce, when Moicano gave up his neck. That's when Makhachev gets the finishes. So regardless of how he just waits for a submission to be right in his hands to even think about finishing anyone, he has a nice submission game regardless. Really good Darce, good Kimuras, good wrestler submissions. And I hate his performance against JDM. I hate how he laid on Volk. I hate how he laid on Poirier when they grappled. But, his contender fights are actually entertaining. I like his fight with Oliveira, besides the fact that he also laid on him in the first round. I was thinking about moving Makhachev up a tier, but I don't think his grappling is as boring as Merab's. There you go. We move on to the next guy we're going to put on this tier list. And this is the first guy that I would rather watch paint dry than watch fight. No clue why he hasn't been cut from the UFC, man, but it's MVP. Actually cut this guy from the UFC. What are we doing? If we're going to cut Makhachev, if we're going to cut Jailton Almeida, who should be cut anyways? He's super boring too and actually doesn't want to be in a fight out there. If we're going to cut those guys, you need to cut MVP from the UFC. This guy was actually a badass in Bellator, and he finished a lot. Cool guy, emoted after his finishes and stuff. He was like an Adesanya who was actually a marauder, but ever since this guy's got to the UFC, not one finish in the UFC, and he's went against the likes of Chinny Man Sam Patterson, Chinny Man Sam Patterson, Old Man Cannonier, who he dropped twice, and he just let him back up and emoted and just he's like putting his hands on his hips, and it actually pissed me off so bad. Like, go for the finish, man. You're in the UFC for a reason. I guess there wasn't a finishing bonus back then, but man, get the finish. Make a statement for yourself. Get on him and start ground and pounding him. He's 42 years old. Just get on him and do your work and get the finish. Get him out of there. If I was in that cage, I'd be rushing out of there, man. I'd be rushing away to get away with my money, bro. And he just, like in the third round of that fight, Cannonier just dominated him on the ground as well. So, you're really playing with your food out there against a crafty unk like Cannonier. You can't do that, man. Cannonier's got great recovery time, too, and he's a crafty old vet. And Kevin Holland, too, who he also took to decision. I know that was his debut fight, but he also took Kevin Holland to decision. And then Sher Magomedov, who's a tough guy. Sher Magomedov, he's fighting with one eye, so he is a tough customer. But those are all the guys that he's fought and beat, and he's taken them to decision. And then he had a close fight with Ian Gary. Matchup of, the long-rangey, super boring welterweight. We'll talk about Ian Gary in a second, too. Don't think I left him off this tier list. Regardless about MVP, though, all this guy does is just jab and low kick every 2 minutes, and then he's just pops around that range, man. He's like this. He pops around at range like a coke addict. He's just like, and then he'll jab and low kick every 2 seconds. Yeah, man, I'm MVP, man. I'm MVP. And he's just jabbing, low kicking at range for every 2 minutes. Get this guy out of the UFC. I hate watching him fight. He's just comfortable with being up 2 strikes every round, and that's how he edges out rounds, and it's super annoying. Even though Sam Patterson didn't do much either in their fight, the way that MVP fought in that fight made me want Sam Patterson to win. And I was a big MVP fan before he got in the UFC. So, interesting that he doesn't go for a finish at all. Yeah, there you go. We move on to the next guy that we're going to put on this tier list. And on the other side of the spectrum, this can make me more positive, talking about my boy Volk. This guy's more fun to watch. Volk is actually low-key fun to watch, and not just because I'm a big fan of him, not just because he's the GOAT, not just because, I love Volk, man. Let's just say it how it is with Volk. He's a bit boring. Volk is a bit boring, and he's boring in a striker's way. He obviously shoots a few takedowns. In his last 2 fights with Diego Lopez, I think Diego Lopez stuffed almost every single one of his takedowns. Every single one of his takedowns were stuffed in the second fight, but in the first fight, I think Volk actually did get 2 takedowns on Lopez. But despite Volk being a bit boring, he's also the cool type of boring. You know what I mean? Like, Volk is the cool type of boring, not just because he's a dope Aussie striker, but, he strikes with volume. He starts out the fight, glove touch, and immediately he's jabbing and low kicking. Immediately, but not just jabbing and popping at range and low kicking like MVP and doing it every 2 minutes. It's immediate jab, 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 low kick, jab, 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 body kick now, jab, jab, jab. Oh, you're going to rush in 1, 2. And he pops the jab. He has emphasis on his strikes. lots of volume. He goes for damage, and he hurts or even wobbles his opponents if they try to step forward. We see it with Diego Lopez. In the fight with Diego Lopez, actually both fights, whenever Diego Lopez tries to rush in and tries to scrap with him, Volk makes it a bit scrappy for a second. Maybe lands a 1-2 or a nice hook on Diego Lopez's head that sends him stumbling backwards, and he can't be dropped because Diego Lopez has a chin of actually like platinum. I don't know what Diego Lopez's chin is made out of, but whenever an opponent tries to blitz him or scrap with him, they get wobbled, man. They get put out of it. Not put out because Volk don't have that crazy power. Volk's got thud, but at the same time, Volk don't have that one-hitter quitter KO power for sure. But Volk's very technical with it. He's got great volume. If he wants to scrap with you for a second, he'll do that, and then he'll exit, and then he'll get back to his game plan: jab, 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 low kick, jab, 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 low kick. It's not just like jab, pop at distance, pop at distance. Oh, we're gonna wait another 2 minutes. Now a low kick. Now maybe a 1-2, and then that's the end of the round. That's how it is with MVP. But with Volk, it's constant volume, popping the jab, going for damage, busting up Diego Lopez's face a little bit, hurting Yair Rodriguez, getting him out of there with a TKO. That's Volk, man. And a lot of people say Volk is boring, but he's not boring to me because, he goes for damage and he goes for volume. And if you step forward, it's like a don't blink situation because he's so, he's so technical and he's so measured with his attacks. It's like, if an opponent tries to step in, Volk is so sound defensively and, counter defensively that if somebody steps forward on him, he's going to crack him and pause, but it just depends how good of a chin you have, whether or not it's going to hurt you or wobble you or not. And, it sent Diego Lopez stumbling backwards. So, Volk's got to have some power for sure. Anyways, we move on. Enough glazing Volk. Leon Mumblemouth Edwards is the next guy that we're going to put on this tier list. Yeah, man, he's very boring. In my opinion, Leon Mumblemouth Edwards is actually very boring. This guy's low-key underrated for being a decisionator, and a lot of casuals overrate his striking so much because of the headshot dead. On Usman, headshot dead, what? And, he tries to backpack, he likes to try to backpack his opponents as well, and he tries to out-grapple them. It don't usually work for him. It worked with Prates in the first round, but Prates, he's got good jiu-jitsu defense. The thing about Prates is he don't really care about the grappling. He's got good jiu-jitsu defense. I think if him and Makhachev fight, it'll be a boring fight because Makhachev's just going to take him down. Prates has no torso, and that's where a lot of the strength and grappling comes from. Prates might have some good initial takedown defense, but Makhachev's really good with that scrambling and switching to the hips, switching to a single leg, dragging you down, good sweeps, judo tosses. So I think Makhachev definitely get Prates down, but Prates would defend the jiu-jitsu. But regardless, all Leon Edwards really does is try to backpack you. He's never going to get the rear naked choke. He's always too low on the body triangle. Used to be a big guy with a good physique for welterweight, but now all the mutants are coming in, so now it's a little different. He tried to backpack Prates and he got smoked, though. In the second round, Prates is like, man, you become wrestler now, and then all of a sudden, what's the next thing you know? 1-2, left hand down the middle from Prates, and Leon's out cold, snoozing and smiling on the canvas. I low-key felt bad for Leon, man. I used to hate Leon, but now I'm kind of coming around him. As long as he doesn't fight our boy JDM, I'll probably root for him in his next fight. Low-key, unless he's against Mikey Malott. I do have a lot of people hate Mikey Malott, man, but I have a soft spot for Mikey Malott. Mikey Malott, dude, let's get Sendy, bro. Taking that from Bedtime MMA right there. If you know, you know. But Leon Mumblemouth Edwards, he's very boring. We move on to the next guy on this tier list. Who's the next guy we're going to put on here? Oh, yeah, Mobsar. We're going to put Mobsar Evloev as the next guy on this tier list. And, man, bro, people overrate how boring this guy is. He's low-key entertaining sometimes, and he's not as boring as people say he is. And yes, before you guys say anything in the comments, yes, I know he's Dagestani, and yes, I know he does smudge grapple, but he actually tries to damage his opponent with effective ground and pound. We saw Lerone Murphy's face. Lerone Murphy had some big cuts in his face, and some of that was actually from Mobsar striking on the feet with him. Mobsar's low-key a marauder with the ground and pound sometimes, and he's got really nice scrambles. His scrambles are pretty fun to watch. When him and Aljo were scrambling, that's super high level. It was good for the hardcores. I was watching it, and I was actually pretty entertained by it. There's moments of smudge grappling in this guy's fight that do get boring, but he's not like Makhachev where whenever he takes you down, he's just kind of trying to lay on you. Or, well, not as much with Makhachev because Makhachev will he'll get the submission if it's there, but if it's not there, Makhachev's just going to lay on you and try a little ground and pound. Merab actually just lays on you. So Mobstar is nothing like Merab where he just lays on you. Mobstar is always trying to switch positions, pause. He's always very fluid on the ground with his scrambling, with his ability to switch to side control to pass guards. He doesn't have good jiu-jitsu, and he's got 0 finishes in the UFC out of 10 fights. I mean, come on, bro. You got to finish somebody. He's 10-0 in the UFC for a reason. He's a high-level fighter. Close fights with Aljo, close fight with Mobstar. Arnold Allen. I think Arnold Allen could have arguably won that. Probably a draw with Lerone Murphy because I don't know what Mobstar was doing in the first 2 rounds. But regardless, this guy's next up for the title. He ain't going to be a match for Volk. Hopefully that one gets booked soon. I think it'll be booked in September. I'll do a card builder soon. But this is where I think Mobstar stands with these guys in the rankings. He's actually pretty decently fun to watch. We move on to the next guy that we're going to put on this tier list. And Thug Nasty, Bryce Mitchell, baby. We're going to put him in the medium boring tier. He's a smudge grappler. I'm just going to say it out as with Bryce. I love Bryce too. Same thing with Volk. Volk's not a smudge grappler, but it's the same thing with me and Volk as it is with me and Bryce, man. I love Bryce, but he is a smudge grappler. I just have to say it how it is. Bryce is actually a boring fighter. No real volume besides, when he's on the feet and he's trying to take you down and he's effective with the takedown. Super high level with his grappling. His offensive wrestling is actually unmatched at the bantamweight division. He's a super physical guy. I think he's going to be a lot better at bantamweight. The top guys are going to not take him down, but I think the top guys are going to actually beat him up because his striking defense ain't so good. If guys like, Piotr Jan can defend a takedown from Merab, I think Piotr Jan's defending a takedown from Bryce Mitchell, by the way. With that being said, Bryce Mitchell is a fish out of water on the feet. And I know this doesn't have nothing to do with boringness, but the reason why Bryce Mitchell don't strike much is because there's something about Bryce where he just hasn't been able to develop his striking on the feet. He just kind of throws some flicky kicks out there, kind of like Umar does. They don't do much damage. He does try to knee stomp, kick the legs. He's smart with the striking on the feet. Absolutely no striking defense, though. That's why he chooses to take people down, because he is a fish out of water on the feet. Like, the reason that Makhachev chooses to take people down is because he's so effective with it. And Bryce is too, don't get me wrong, but Makhachev is also, a really good defensive striker. Makhachev's a super underrated striker himself. But he chooses to take people down. Bryce Mitchell has no other option but to take people down. So that's why he wrestles all the time. And he's got a really good submission game. He has one of the few twister submissions in UFC history. His corner tells him to look for the twister when he's on the ground. Which not many corners do, which tells you that's a strong tell that Bryce Mitchell's submission game is very solid. Bryce Mitchell's submission game is super high level, but he chooses not to utilize it sometimes, and that's frustrated as a fellow Bryce Mitchell enjoyer, as some of you guys may be in the comments. He chooses not to utilize some of the submissions that are there. He's in mount and can't really do anything with it sometimes. He did, I can't knock him too much for it because he did submit Santiago Luna with the arm triangle. But, before the last 8 seconds of the fight, I do think that he could have submitted Santiago Luna earlier by opening up a little bit with some ground and pound. That's another thing about Bryce, man. He needs to add more ground and pound to his bag. He don't really damage his opponents too much on the ground. And if he adds some effective ground and pound, less volume, more precision, just raining down some elbows at a time, not like constant volume and pitter-pattering like Sean Brady. We'll talk about that guy in a second too. But, like some effective ground and pound for Bryce Mitchell, raining down some nice elbows, just like straights on the ground, hook into the sides of, Santiago Luna's head. That would have been open for him to do, and opening up Santiago Luna with ground and pound would have, given opportunities for submissions. Maybe Santiago Luna takes his back trying to scramble out of the ground and pound, and then, maybe Bryce Mitchell just keeps pounding away, or he takes the back and then works his jiu-jitsu, and then maybe, he starts jiu-jitsu from there, which is what he's good at. So, I think Bryce Mitchell's medium boring. There's some things that he needs to work on in his game to be more of a finisher, to be more threatening in the division. But yeah, there you go. We move on to the next guy on this tier list, Ian Gary, man. I guess you guys forgot. You guys thought I was going to forget about Ian Gary, man. I am never going to forget about Ian Gary on a negative-based tier list. He's very boring. I think Ian Gary is very boring, and not just because I don't like him. I swear this guy's just a boring-ass striker with no power whatsoever. And I have no clue how he rocked Prates with that uppercut. Prates is always... That's one thing about Prates, man. Prates always does seem to be open 4 uppercuts, 4 strikes up the middle because of his Muay Thai stance, because of his Muay Thai style of defense. He is open for, strikes that come up the middle. So, to anybody who's going to face Process in the future that's watching this, look out for that. Not like you can, because that guy's insane power. It's actually crazy. Process is a mutant. He's super good. I think he only gets beat by Makhachev, but could get beat by Morales, though, because Morales has crazy power. Morales throws uppercuts, too. If Ian Gary can rock you with an uppercut, Morales definitely can. And if JDM can hit you on the chin for a second for an uppercut and kind of make you go, whoa, hold on a second, Morales definitely can. So he's got to watch out in a fight with Morales. But regardless, off of the topic of Process, I know I went on that little rabbit hole sometimes this video. Ian Gary's just a boring ass striker. He's got no power. He has pillow hands, man. That's the thing about Ian Gary, is if Ian Gary had power, he'd be scary at welterweight. But he doesn't, because of his style, he's just very poppy. I don't know how I came up with that word, but he just kind of pulls everything back. Like he'll throw a kick and then he'll just pull it back super sharply. Don't do much damage unless it's against his strikes don't do much damage unless they're against low level fighters like Song Keenan or Song Kanan, I think his name is, or D-Rod. Low level guys with lower level striking defense like that are the only guys that get rocked by Ian Gary's shots, and guys that are of that size too, like Daniel Rodriguez and Song Kanan are a different size for welterweight, where they look like they can be chinned, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, no clue how Ian Gary rocked Process with an uppercut when he couldn't, Shavkat has a crazy chin. Never mind. Forget what I'm saying about that. He's talented, but he also strikes. I'm going to make an analogy for a second. He also kind of strikes like Makhachev grapples. You know what I mean? Like Makhachev grapples, smudge grappling. And Ian Gary, it's like less volume, but he kind of strikes like Makhachev grapple. Like he's kind of smudge striking, if you know what I mean. That might be a new term on the JJ MMA channel. You know what I'm saying? Ian Gary's kind of smudge striking. It's just like low kick at distance, utilizes range. He's a dominant master. He's a very dominant master of distance control, is a good definition for what Ian Gary's fight style is. And it makes him boring in like an Adesanya type of way, where he's just kind of like low kicking, jabbing, 1-2 occasionally, throws in some combos, oblique kicks, that type of style at distance, and his personality don't make it any better. He's actually so annoying, it's crazy. But yeah, that's where I rate Ian Gary on this tier list. We move on to the next guy on this tier list. Umar. We're going to put him in the very boring tier. Umar, I just talked about him earlier in the video when I was talking about Merab. He's an absolute smudge grappler who does everything to avoid a finish when he's in a high-level fight. Like, I know he put away Raoni Barcelos. I know I just said high-level fight, and Raoni Barcelos is a high-level fight. He put away Raoni Barcelos before Raoni Barcelos was kind of on this marauding tear that he's been on recently. Raoni Barcelos has a very questionable chin, and Umar is solid with the striking, but he ain't entertaining with it, man. Don't give it like if you're a good striker, that don't always mean you're entertaining. MVP over here, he's a good striker. Ian Gary's a great striker. If you're a good striker, that doesn't mean you're entertaining when you strike. Umar on the feet is not entertaining at all. He just flicks out a kick out there and prays it'll do damage. Or he'll throw like a head kick into a 2, offbeat strikes. I think the offbeat strike is kind of how he caught Raoni Barcelos, if I'm remembering the fight correctly. Other than that, he did have a good fight with Merab. Other than that, he's got 0 entertaining fights. Whenever this guy, like the fight with Sandhagen, the fight with Figgy, fight with Batista, his fight with Batista, he did have some good scrambles and dogged out a nice heel hook that Batista threw on him. But other than that, he's got 0 entertaining fights. Whenever this guy fights, I kind of want to turn off the TV midway through the first round. Whenever he fights, like midway through the first round, he's already holding you on the fence, trying to knee the thigh, stomp the foot, and get a takedown. And he usually gets it. Unless you have initial good. My nose is itchy. Initially good takedown defense. But yeah, that's where I'd rate Umar. He's very boring. We move on to the next guy that I'm going to put on this tier list. Oh, my nose just doesn't stop itching, does it? Helps to itch my nose from the outside because I got no cartilage here. But anyways, we move on to the next guy that I'm going to put on this tier list. Speaking of the devil, man, I didn't realize that I was also going to put Mario Batista here. But Mario Batista, man, I think he can be entertaining at times. He's mainly just hated on for his Jose Aldo performance. He does have smudge grappling, though, at the same time, And he is very deserved, like the hate for the Jose Aldo performance is actually very deserved, in my opinion. Holding someone up against the fence like Jose Aldo and just kneeing him in the thigh is never acceptable, and no way he should have won the fight doing that. He should have been DQ'd for like the third round that he was doing that in. He does have smudge grappling, as I recently mentioned, with a twist of a nasty submission game, though. Hold on, now this is where it gets interesting. Like the first round of the fight of him and Vinicius Oliveira that he had recently, he was smudge grappling with Vinicius Oliveira. He was kind of just holding him down, trying to advance positions, though. Like he has some nice, he has some nice jiu-jitsu for sure. Like he's moving over to mount, side control, half guard, passing the full guard. He's got some good submission game for sure, and he's a very smooth grappler. He's got decent boxing too, and he can actually scrap on the fight, on the feet. On the feet. He can actually scrap on the feet when he needs to. So, that's another thing about Mario Batista is he has the ability to strike on the feet. He has a nasty submission game, so once you're on the ground, I mean, like as long as you're in as long as he's got you in a good position and you're watching the Mario Batista fight, don't blink, man, because he can submit you in a lick. He can submit you like that. Mario Batista has really good submission game, diverse submission game for sure. He's submitted guys with some interesting submissions too in the UFC. Stuff that you don't usually see high-level UFC fighters getting caught with. So, Mario Batista can definitely be entertaining at times. At the same time, though, that Jose Aldo performance does definitely bring him down. And yeah, there you go. We move on to the next fight. Not the next fight. Sorry. I was thinking this was a predictions video or recap video or whatever. The next guy that we're going to put on this tier list is the second guy that I would rather watch paint dry than watch fight. Torres Finney, man. I'm actually about to get mad looking at this guy, bro. This guy in his big-ass trap. Oh, my gosh. He makes me so mad to look at. And somehow this guy's a middleweight at 5'7". How are you a middleweight and you're shorter than me, dude? I don't understand. I'm 5'9", by the way. How are you a middleweight and you're 5'7"? What does this guy actually bring to the table in life? You know what I mean? All right, never mind. I'm not trying to diss on him like that. But what does this guy actually bring to the table besides smudge grappling with 0 damage? That's number one, smudge grappling with 0 damage. That's what this guy does. That's the way that he wins fights. That's the way that he beat Robert Valentin, even though he should have never won that fight by doing 0 damage to him. This guy had control time. This guy had control the whole fight, and he had control of Robert Valentin on the ground and on the cage the whole time, and he didn't do a lick of damage to him. Robert Valentin outlanded him on the feet. He outlanded him on the ground with punches. This guy, he has smudge grappling with 0 damage. That's number one. He was winging overhands against Jacob Malkoun. That's all he does. All he does is just wing overhands when he's on the feet, and he always misses them despite having a crazy reach and being 5'7". I think this guy actually has like a John Jones level reach for being 5'7". And he also looks like the Dubis Goot Ganoog dude, if you know what I'm talking about. The guy that's like Dubis Goot Ganoog, Dubis Goot Ganoog. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, the Dubis Goot Ganoog dude. Just look him up, man. He looks exactly like Torres Finney. And his fight with Robert Valentin pissed me off so much. And Jacob Malkoun is a worldwide hero for putting the beats on him, beating the brakes off him is what Jacob Malkoun did to Torres Finney. And I was so happy seeing Torres Finney dropped. He is a tough guy, but at the same time, he was landing nothing on Jacob Malkoun. He was just winging overhands and, prey wrestling. I don't even think this guy's in the UFC right now. Maybe this guy doesn't even qualify for this tier list. I forgot. Is he still on the roster? Oh, never mind. He is still on the roster. That's the whole reason I made this video. I looked through the roster. But, yeah, he's still on the roster somehow. He looks like the Dubis Goot Ganoog dude. Wings overhands. That's all he was doing against Jacob Malkoun, and he doesn't bring anything to the table besides smudge grappling and doing those 2 things that I just listed. Yeah, there you go. We move on to the next guy that we're going to put on this tier list, Arman Tsarukyan. Where do I put him? It's always interesting to think about where I could put Arman Tsarukyan. I think I'm going to put him in the medium boring tier, and it's for these reasons, besides his personality. We'll talk about that in a second. But when he actually does fight, because he's so inactive. This guy will do 2 RAF wrestling matches per month. This guy does 2 RAF wrestling matches per month, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, Arman, you're so active. You're so active, Arman. You take 2 wrestling matches per month. You're a hero. You should be given a fight by the UFC. Ilya's ducking you, Ilya. Stop running, Ilya. You're running with the belt. You're running away from the real contender. Bro, it's because, dude, what? I no way that people that aren't absolute Twitter bots think that Armin will beat Ilya. There's no way. I think that Armin's a tougher matchup than Gaethje, don't get me wrong, but there's no way people don't think that Ilya's chinning this guy or submitting him or doing whatever he wants with him. I don't understand that at all. I'm so much more interested in Ilya fighting Makhachev, but anyways, we'll talk more about that in a second. When he actually does fight, he's very good and he's very talented, but he only is that due to his smudge grappling, to be honest. Like, he has decent ground and pound regardless. You know, I know he had a nasty finish over, I think it was Joaquin Silva, who he got stumbled pretty badly by originally. You know, he had a nasty finish over Joaquin Silva with ground and pound. He's not as boring as the rest of this tier, I will say. I wouldn't say that he's as boring as Bilal. I wouldn't say that he's as boring as Makhachev. I wouldn't say he's as boring as Bryce, you know, even though I kind of do want to put Bryce above him in entertainingness. But actually, no, I think him and Bryce are actually on the same level because Bryce threatens submissions more than Armin does. Actually, no, that's a lie. They're on the same tier. What am I talking about? But, you know, he's not as boring as the rest of this tier. I wouldn't say Armin's as boring as the rest of this tier, but he's also not very fun to watch. You know, he has the finish over Dan Hooker. He has a few finishes. In the Oliveira fight, you know, he did nothing other than grapple. You know, I know he landed a little axe kick on Oliveira and stuff, and cute striking and cute kicks. You know, he's actually a solid striker on the feet, and he's underrated on the feet. But, you know, he's just not on the feet enough. Like Dan Hooker was low-key landing on him on the feet. And Dan Hooker shouldn't be landing on you if you're a high-level, you know, defensive striker. A high-level fighter shouldn't be getting landed on by Dan Hooker. But yeah, you know, he's actually so annoying, and that's, I think, what drops him down in this tier he could be in the can be entertaining at times tier, but I think what drops him down for me is just because I don't like him. He's actually so annoying. He does 2 RAF wrestling matches per month, and then everyone's like, oh my god, you're so active, Armin. Armin, Ilya, stop running, Ilya. You're ducking him. You're running with the bell. Ilya, stop running, Ilya. It's so annoying. I almost just pissed myself off doing that. So I'm going to move on from this tier before I get, not this tier from Armin, before I get too mad. We're going to put this guy in the same tier as Armin, the medium boring tier. Mateusz Gamrot, I think Armin, by the way, Armin beat Gamrot. I think Armin got absolutely robbed by Gamrot. There's no way Gamrot won that. Daylight robbery. I don't know how people scored that 49-46 for Gamrot. He's actually pretty boring. All he can do is really shoot takedowns, and he's good with the takedowns. He has good grappling. When he's on the ground, though, absolutely no ground and pound. Doesn't damage his opponents. Armin actually tries to damage his opponents. So this is why I'd say Armin's like a high-level medium boring, or a low-level medium boring, considering we're going down the tier list and more entertaining. But all Mateusz Gamrot can do is land takedowns, and once he lands takedowns, it's time for lay prey, and he hopes for an arm triangle to present itself, and that's how he gets finishes. Arm triangles, he's okay on the feet. You know, like, Esteban Ribovic looked a lot better than him on the feet when they fought. But, you know, Esteban Ribovic is a good striker, so I won't hold it against him. But, you know, he hopes for an arm triangle to present itself, and to be in that position, he has to be in mount. And sometimes he has a hard time passing fighters' guards. He was able to do to Esteban Ribovic in his most recent fight and get him out of there with an arm triangle. He's a high-level fighter, but I think he's pretty boring. We move on to the next guy. I don't have much more to talk about with Mateusz Gamrot. We're going to move on, though, to another Polish guy on the tier list, and that's going to be Jan Blachowicz. And you know what? Bro, why does Jan low-key please me with his calf kicks at range? Pause, bro. But low-key Polish power, he's fun to watch. And I know he's just like calf kicking at range. I know he's up here and just kind of moving around. And, you know, he's kind of just calf kicking at range sometimes. I think he's still very high level, though. I think he beat Carlos Ulberg in their fight. He's definitely still a high-level fighter. He can definitely still compete with the best of them. I think a younger buck like Yuri, who's going to make things chaotic, you know, who's going to really force a brawl out of you, I think Yuri would probably beat up Jan. But other than that, man, I think that Yuri, I know Jan and Magomed Ankalaev, they already fought and they drawed. But, you know, I think that Jan probably beats Ankh in a rematch. I think Jan is low-key a nightmare matchup for Ankh. Hot take, man. It's my hot take, but low-key, Jan pleases me with his calf kicks at range. He's fun to watch, in my opinion. I like watching this guy, man. I ain't got much else to say. I could sing more praises for Jan, but we're going to do that in a future video, actually, because I have him scheduled for a future video that I have coming up. Possibly. I don't know if I'm going to put him in it yet. But anyways, we move on to the next guy that I'm going to put on this tier list. Who am I going to put on this tier list next? I'm going to put Cheeto Vera. Oh, that's not Cheeto Vera. Never mind. We're going to put Roman Dolidze in the can be entertaining at times tier. I really wanted to put him in the medium boring tier because I don't like Roman Dolidze. He serves no purpose to me. I don't know what he even does, besides attempting to smudge grapple, and, he throws spinning back fists. Like, what does this guy even do? I guess I just put him on here for like a filler, but all this guy does is kind of just like lay on you and smudge grapple, and then he tries to throw like spinning back fists. He did that to Christian Leroy Duncan, and then he was like weighing them, but he actually did drop CLD for a second with the spinning back fist, so he is crafty with them. Roman Dolidze is actually a crafty number 15 in the middleweight division. I think that they're going to sacrifice him to like Yusri Belgarawi or something. Hopefully they do. I think Yusri Belgarawi deserves a ranking spot more than a Teba Gautier for all the can crushing he's done. That shouldn't be rewarded. But, he gets some finishes. I think he's got like 11 finishes out of 15 wins, so he can be entertaining. And he's also had some crafty wars with Vettori. He obviously can't finish. You can't finish Marvin Vettori. Marvin Vettori is actually unfinishable. I don't know what the guy's made of. But he's had some crafty wars with Vettori where he's damaged him up, where he's outlanded him on strikes. So, I think, and I still have no clue to this day why they haven't done Dolidze versus Vettori 3 at the White House. Should have been the main event. And yeah, that's what I think about Roman Dolidze. We move on to the next guy that we're going to put on this tier list. And this is Cheeto Vera. And we're going to put Cheeto Vera in the medium boring tier. I know Cheeto Vera is a striker. I know Cheeto Vera is a striker, and I know he has knockouts. I know he's cool. I know he's a cool Ecuadorian guy and stuff. But he actually just annoys the shit out of me. Not gonna lie. I forgot what I was gonna say. I had a mental block, but he just throws. He has no output until round 3. I got caught up in such a bad starter there. I can't get over that. He just absolutely throws zero output from this guy until round 3, until the last second, until he needs a finish. We saw that against David Martinez. He actually did start to damage him up and piece up David Martinez a little bit in round 3, but he never gets the finish, and it's always just too late for him. He gets dominated, throws no output in the first 2 rounds. Gets mad at his opponent for some reason in between rounds. That's how it was with Ayman Zahabi. That's how it was with David Martinez. I think he beat Ayman Zahabi, though. I actually think he beat Ayman Zahabi, and he dropped Ayman Zahabi, I think, with a jab. So I don't know how that happened. I'm just going to put him in the medium boring tier because we see nothing really out of this guy until the 3rd round. And that's why I'm going to put him in the medium boring tier. He just doesn't do anything. And when he's on the ground, like when a guy gets him on the ground, he just throws up submissions that'll never work, man. It just pisses me off. He's like what Rob Font was doing against Chiwiwis and just throwing up the omoplata. That's never going to work for him. I just want this guy to be sacrificed to Bryce Mitchell. I know Bryce Mitchell's in the medium boring tier as well, but this is the good boring one. You know what I'm saying? Like Bryce Mitchell, I low-key want to put him in the can be entertaining at times tier because he's got finishes. That's why, and he's got finishes, and he's crafty. And he'll strike, and he's a tough guy. So I low-key do want to put Bryce Mitchell in the. If there was a tier between medium boring and can be entertaining, I put Bryce Mitchell here. You know what? So let's just pretend that there is, and I would put him there because I think he's less boring than the rest of this guys in this tier. But yeah, please sacrifice Cheeto Vera to Bryce Mitchell. There you go. We move on to the next guy that I'm going to put on this tier list. Yeah, and I'm going to put this guy in the very boring tier. And we did talk about this guy earlier in the video. Sean Brady, man. He's a smudge grappler. Sean Brady is a smudge. I like Sean Brady though. Like I like his personality. He's a funny guy sometimes. He's kind of just got this like short man syndrome, and I find it really funny. And he's always like angry, and I think it just might be the Philly in him. But he was on the post fight show after the Bilal and Bonfim fight. And I think he was like calling out Bonfim or JDM or something. And he was like, "Look, man, listen, I don't give a fuck who I fight." And he's just like, "I want to fight somebody. I want to smudge and decision the shit out of somebody, man. I don't give a fuck, man. Give me my Philly cheesesteak, man." That's basically just what Brady sounds like. That's what he was saying, minus the Philly cheesesteak part on the show with I think it was like Anthony Lionheart Smith and Chris Weidman. But regardless, we're gonna talk about how boring Sean Brady is. He's a smudge grappler, and he's usually very boring. This guy's a deep submission bag, and he chooses never to use it. It's worse than Bryce Mitchell, because at least Bryce Mitchell's like looking for the positions. Brady's just like laying there, and then little ground and pound like this. He's just like landing on Joaquin Buckley's like far the oh my gosh, Barty. far extended high guard on the ground, and he's just like pitter patter in his guard, like little tiny hook shots, and they're just, it's volume for sure, but it's not entertaining at all because it's just not going to damage him. There's no like it's just like you see that happen and it's like, oh, what, like Sean Brady's not going to do anything here. So there's no way Sean Brady's going to damage Joaquin Buckley like this. And he did the same thing kind of to Leon Edwards, except like no ground and pound. Like no damaging ground and pound. It's just like boom, 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 little hammer fist, little hooks from the top, you know, trying to get it around the guard. And then Joaquin Buckley's like throwing more effective strikes off his back, just like throwing up prayers with the hammer fist. Pause. That was kind of a sus movement, but you know, he does zero damage with any type of strike that he throws on the feet as well. Like he landed a clean left hook on Buckley, and it seemed to do absolutely nothing to him. Joaquin Buckley kind of just like ate it on the chin. And you know, it was like a jumping left hook. It was like a strong strike from Sean Brady, and it did absolutely nothing to Joaquin Buckley. He's got horrible ground and pound. We already mentioned that. He has a worse case of pillow hands than Belal, in my opinion. That's probably why he got finished by Belal. But yeah, there you go. That's what I think about Sean Brady. We got 2 guys left to go on this tier list. We move on to the next guy, and we're going to put this guy in the low-key fun to watch tier. I'm saving a rant for the last one, guys. So, hey, make sure you pay attention for the last one, because I'm saving a special someone for the last part of the video. I want to talk about Strickland now. And you know where I'm going to put Strickland. He's low-key fun to watch, in my opinion. Here's the fucking thing, you guys. Who doesn't like to watch jabbing and teeping for 25 minutes? I personally do, maybe just because of Strickland's personality, but I've never been more entertained by watching anyone jab and teep their way to a decision in my life. Never in my life have I been more excited to see Strickland jab and teep his way to a decision, and I know it's coming every time. Except for when he finished Anthony Hernandez. I didn't expect that. But, you know, Anthony Hernandez is chinny to the body. Some genius out there actually did predict that, or some geniuses out there actually did predict that. I said it would be open. I said the body would be opened for maybe a body shot TKO, but I didn't expect him to, you know, hit a knee on his body and stuff. Like, Sean Strickland, when he's feeling loose, he's a dynamic striker. But usually it's just the jab and the teep. He didn't utilize his teep at all against against Hamzat. He didn't utilize the teep at all against Anthony Hernandez. So maybe the jabbing and teeping is out of his game now. But he does tend to still raise up the leg and, you know, fake the teep, or, you know, fake checking a leg kick and then, you know, maybe throw a 2 off of it. So Strickland's kind of adjusted his game in that way. He has good volume, though. Like, the reason, you know, the same thing with Volk. Like, the reason why this guy isn't a boring striker like an MVP, like Leon Edwards, like Ian Gary, is because, you know, he's always pushing the pace and he has good volume. You know, he's always throwing that jab out there. He's always, you know, damaging your face up. It's just so technical that anything could happen. That's the reason that he gets finishes, is because, you know, he lulls these guys into a false sense of comfort. Like, oh my gosh, I'm just getting my face jabbed off. He's not going to throw anything powerful, and then all of a sudden, you know, hit you with a big knee to the body or something, or maybe land a little right hand that he throws out there, and then all of a sudden, oh shit, I'm on wobbly legs, or oh shit, I'm hurt to the body. So that's kind of Strickland's game when, you know, he's just throwing these jabs and teeps, is he's just trying to break you mentally, and if he doesn't break you mentally, well, you're going to decision with him, and you're going to lose 49-46. That's the way that Strickland fights. And he pushes the pace against high-level strikers like Adesanya. I know Chimaev isn't a striker, but he's a good striker, though. He pushes a high level pace against Chimaev, and he wins the fight. Clearly wins the fight, by the way. You know, he's doing this to Paulo Costa, who's underrated. I know Paulo Costa's gotten better since his fight with Strickland, but, you know, he's doing this to Anthony Hernandez, who's a decent striker. He's doing this to Jared Cannonier. And I know Cannonier won the fight, but he didn't actually win the fight. This is a complete robbery. He doesn't stay at distance is another thing. Like, Strickland doesn't pop around at distance like a coke addict like MVP does, where MVP's go, bitch the body, Dr. Bobby waiting on me for you. I just throw a little UK drill rap there. But he doesn't stay at distance and jitter around like MVP or Ian Gary. And that's why I think, you know, he's actually entertaining to watch, unlike MVP, who just goes like this at distance and drops his hands. So annoying, man. Can't get my mind off MVP. Anyways, we move on. We're going to rant on this one. This is our final guy on the tier list, and we're going to rant about this one. I would rather watch paint dry than watch Raul Ruiz Jr. fight in a UFC fight. All this guy does is smudge grapple. I can't stand him with his ugly-ass crescent moon face. He does zero damage on the feet to top competition. You know, like once he's against good competition in the bantamweight division, whether it's Robert Font Jr., who's not that good still, you know, he does zero damage. He does zero damage on the feet. And I know he's had like some TKOs in the UFC, but it's against super low-level, chinny competition. He has not very, like, his striking is not good. And he decided not to utilize it anyways because he just decided to take his opponent down and lay on them and go, I'm el disgusto, and rub his little crescent moon chin on him and his deformed nose. And it pisses me off. And you see him on the side of the guy, of Rob Font's body, and he does nothing to him. He does zero damage, and he just lays on you, and he wins the fight because, you know, his opponents can't do any damage because of how effective his smudge grappling is. But he just does zero damage, and he's so annoying with his ugly ass crescent moon face and his jaw that's completely flexed forward, worse than Chelsea Chandler in the most recent fight. I'm officially you know what? I'm gonna do it. I've reached my breaking point. I'm officially putting a $1,000 bounty on the head of Raul Rosas Jr., and I have the money to do so. The money will be given with these guidelines. I'm going to lay out some guidelines. The money will be given to the first fighter to connect on Raul Rosas Jr.'s outwards flexed jaw and knock him out cold, stiff as a board, like arms completely locked out. You have to do that and knock him out cold, stiff as a board, on the canvas in round 1. And he has to be either palms up or face down like Gaethje. Yeah, one of the two. And that's the way that you get $1,000 from JJ MMA. Okay, clip this. And this is the bounty, official bounty that's being put on the head of Raul Rosas Jr. I'm done seeing him smudge grapple. I'm done with Raul Rosas Jr. And I'm done with his ugly ass crescent moon face. Get out of here, Verna Jandiroba. Go back to the women's division. All right, I'm done. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you later. Follow me on X. Follow me on Twitter at the JJMMA, at the JJMMA official on Instagram. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I'll see you later. Goodbye.